What'd she say?
You know what happened that first day, that first time, we was like, everybody went silent. Nobody wanted to vote for us. Yeah. If that's what you heard.
He had the iron fist in here. He was running.
I can lay it down.
He's laying it down, man.
I was laughing as I was zipping past your house as you were briskly walking to your truck.
I was like on two wheels, man.
I just went and I sat there for a few minutes, just by myself. Yeah. Just sat there.
What is that? What? That's it down.
We were just saying, boy, make it real when you sit right here and you look down here. Our friend's not there. Pretty real.
Yeah, I was too.
I think we got 1 minute. I told you about eating those watermelons, girl. Good. How you feeling? What's your GCA? I forgot. Well, it's so funny, everybody, gives you advice and stuff cracks me up. I'm not doing that.
Never any expectation.
Give yourself grace. That's all. That's my only advice. Grace.
That is good advice.
Good evening and welcome to the City of Douglasville Planning Commission meeting. I am Francisco Artley, the chairman of the Planning Commission. The other members of the Planning Commission are Keith Burnett, the vice chair, Natalie Fegan, Nathan Zachary, Ralph Benton, and Mark Van. The staff members are Shayla Reed, Community Development Director, Miranda Jordan, Staff Attorney, Dana Gray, Senior Planner, and Chelsea Tubbs, Planner 1. There are a few protocol items I need to make you aware of before we start the meeting. Please listen closely on how tonight's meeting will be conducted. Keep your comments and presentation on a professional level, dealing with the facts that are important for this commission to make its decision. We will not accept comments that are considered by the chair to be a personal attack on any individual or group of individuals. You will receive a warning from the chair if you deviate from this requirement. A second deviation will result in a request for you to leave the meeting and the premises for the evening. Refrain from any applause or comments from the audience. Only one person will be talking at a time, and all comments will be made at the podium after the speaker has been recognized by the chair. Please direct all comments to the chair and the commission, not to the audience or the staff. Please do not applaud or react to the speakers. Speak from the audience. Cheer, carry on a conversation with others in the audience, or disrupt the order of this meeting in any way. Be aware that these hearings are not a debate or an opportunity to ask questions which must be answered by any individual tonight, but are merely an opportunity to present information to the commission. Other than the applicant, no person may speak more than once. The applicant may reserve part of their speaking time as rebuttal and may speak next and last and may use the entire 20 minutes allotted for the pro side of the application. Other than the applicant, no person may speak longer than 5 minutes. If you have a cell phone or other electronic device, I ask that you either power them off or put them on silent mode. If anyone wishes to speak tonight, please fill out a form available at the table up front and hand to the staff before approaching to the podium. After the case is called, we will hear next from the staff regarding any relevant information to this case. The commission members will be free to ask questions at any time before voting on a project. Following the applicant, anyone who wishes to speak for or against the project or just ask questions will have an opportunity to do so. The city ordinance restricts each side to a maximum of 20 minutes, or time may be waived at the discretion of the presiding official. If any questions are raised, we may ask the applicant to speak again. Afterward, we will call for a motion and a second, have any necessary discussion, and if the matter is not tabled, we will vote to recommend approval or denial of the application. This commission is only a recommending body. The items will be heard by the mayor and council, whether we recommend approval or denial. Unless tabled, all items will be heard by the city's mayor and council at their legislative meeting on Thursday, August 15th, and then voted upon by them at their meeting on the following Monday, August 19th. The first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from July 9th. Is there any need for discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion
Go ahead.
to approve the minutes from July 9th.
All right, a second?
I second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the minutes from July 9th have been passed. Is there any old business? None. All right. Under new business, the first item is case item 24-269. Hold a public hearing and consider a request for a change in zoning from R2 Single Family Residential Detached District to R3 Single Family Residential Detached District for plus or minus 33.26 acres located at the intersection of Campbellton Street and I-20 in Land Lot 22, District 1, Section 5. Parcel ID 002015C014, 0022-015C015, 0022-015C016, 0022-015C018, 0022-015C076, 0022-015C077, 0022-015C088, 0022-015C089, and Land Lot 23, District 1, Section 5, Parcel ID 023-0150024. Application by Trayton Homes. Staff will now present the item.
Greetings, Planning Commissioners. I am Shayla Reed, Community Development Director at 6695 Church Street. This particular request, you may recall, just to give you a little history, it did come before you last month, or maybe a month or so ago, but it came before you as an R2 to R5 request. you recommended to the council denial of that application. It went to council, and council heard the same application as you, but we've partnered with the application, we being staff, we found ways to make it work to reduce the R5 to now R3. So now they're asking to have it from R2 to R3. That is, of course, by partnership and recommendation by city staff. So with that, they've heard what we've asked, and they're working with us. And that concludes my report.
All right. Are there any questions?
Yeah, quick question. What's the main difference between R3 and R5 again?
Yes, sir. So it's the number of units per acre. So you have R3 is going to be 3 units per acre. R5 is going to be 5 units per acre. So what happens is, of course, the larger the number, the higher the density. So R3 and R2 are very closely together in count. I wanted to ensure that it stayed within medium density, as the comprehensive plan says, and R3 is a medium density. So they're staying within what the comprehensive plan recommends for the 20-year focus for that area.
So last time, what was it, 85?
Mm-hmm.
84?
It was.
Yeah, 84, and what are we now? I know it says
58.
something.
58.
Okay.
But they were attached or combined, right?
No,
they
they
were
were single-family
single-family
detached.
homes.
They were cottage homes, so they were much smaller in square footage.
And the garages were in the back.
In the rear, yes. Yep.
All right.
And the applicant is present if you have any questions for him directly.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Will the applicant come forward and state their name and address for the record? Tell us what you intend to do on this property.
Joe Fowler, Post Office Box 49, Douglasville. I'm here on behalf of the applicant with Richard Parvey, who was here last time when we talked about this. It's seeking the rezoning of these 33 acres. It was first before you on June the 4th, and there were two things at that time. First, changing the R5 ordinance, and then our application under that proposed R5 change. The R5 ordinance not only provides for the 5 units per acre, but it also required that the garages be on alleyways in the back, like you see in places in Tributary. The success of the project that you had before you depended upon the R5 ordinance being changed entirely to remove the requirement for the alleyways in the rear. When it ultimately went before the city after a tabling and some further discussions, the city decided that it would change the R5 ordinance to maintain a requirement that 60% of the garages be on the alleyways. The site plan that you had back in June would not work on that basis. So anything that we requested under the proposed R5, we could not do. We met with staff. We had a capable meeting that got things worked out, constructive meeting that got things worked out, and you now have before you the revised site plan that you see on slide number 2. Calls for a total of 58 units. All of the other conditions that we talked about earlier in terms of separations from the nearby properties, improvements to Elizabeth Drive. In fact, what's changed since we were here before you last was that we are constructing 2 additional lanes out of Elizabeth Drive. The existing lane will go northbound. The center lane that will be added will go straight across toward the hospital, and a right turn lane, right only, out onto Campbellton. We will also have between lots 12 and 13 a right out only for those who don't want to come out to Elizabeth, who want to leave the main body of the subdivision and get to the interstate. Everything else with respect to fencing and shrubbery remains the same. So that's the application. We appreciate the city's assistance with respect to the revisions to the ordinance, and we respectfully request your approval. If you have detailed questions, Richard can answer any of those that you may have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So the exit only on Campbellton now, is that like just an exit to the right, or can they go across, or?
On Elizabeth Drive, there'll be ways to go left to the north,
Right.
straight across toward the hospital,
Right.
and right out onto Campbellton.
Right, I got
There'll-
that, but the one between 12 and 13, is that just?
Right out only.
Right out,
There's a
okay.
median there.
Okay.
There will be no exits out of the subdivision going left down
Because of the
westward on
median.
Elizabeth Drive.
Okay. All right. Are there any questions from the board?
I have one question. And applicant may want to answer this, but what are thoughts about people coming from 20 down Campbellton Street, like heading towards downtown, and then trying to go left into the, what's the game plan for that?
We have met with the county DOT, which in conjunction with the city regulates that intersection. And what we have suggested is creating a larger stacking lane for the vehicles that will turn left. I've spoken to some of the people who have spoken previously. By the way, you may remember we had 2 group meetings with about 25 people each, first in February, and then late May or early June. And something that came up was, what can we do about lengthening that stacking lane? That's going to be something that the DOT will address afterwards, but it will be on our nickel if it's required. And we think it's an appropriate suggestion.
Okay. Are there any other questions? See you tapping your hand over there, Ralph. I thought you were going to tap.
Ask a question, so I got to ask. A lot less units, less traffic.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of the project, ask questions, or make other comments? Please come forward and tell us your name and address. Is there anyone who would like to speak other than in favor of this project? Please come forward and tell us your name and address. Is there any need for further discussion? Do I have a motion regarding this application?
I'll make a motion to approve application for 24-269.
Second.
All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. The motion passes and the application is recommended for approval and will be heard by the mayor and council at their legislative meeting on August 15th and then voted upon on August 19th. The second case is item 24-252, hold a public hearing and consider a request for a change in zoning from CG General Commercial County and a portion of PRD Planned Residential Development District City to GC General Commercial District City for plus or minus 3.266 acres at the intersection of Lee Road and I-20 and Land Lot 719, District 18, Section 2, Parcel ID 07191820002 and 07191820016, and a portion of Parcel ID 07191820005. Application by Arpit Kumar, is that right? Arpit Kumar Patel. Staff will now present the item.
Thank you. This is a rezoning application that is in conjunction to an annexation application. As you are aware, the annexation applications go straight to council, so that's why you don't have it before you, but I would like to explain the rezoning request that they do have. This is a particular piece of land, as you mentioned, that's off of Lee Road. It's currently within the county, and it has the county zoning of GC, and then another portion of the land that's within the city, that's PRD. And so those portions of land would be requesting to zone it to general commercial. That general commercial zoning classification will allow the use for a convenience store with gas pumps and a liquor store on that site. You may recall this is the piece that fronts Lee Road where the apartments are being built to the rear of that location. It has gone through the annexation review with the county and is now ready to move forward to the Planning Commission with your recommendation. That concludes my report.
All right. Are there any questions from the board?
I do. How much of it are you trying to have zoned for, how much of it is planned residential currently?
So there's a portion of it. This parcel had to be split to allow for the division. There's a portion of it that is a larger piece that has an apartment complex on it. They're wanting to take a portion that has the apartment complex on it, cut that piece off to add to the other portion of land that will have the commercial use. So they subdivided it, it went through that process successfully. Now that small portion of land, it's about 1.5 acres, that's going to be detached from that piece and then allowing it to have that separate zoning. So 1.5 acres.
That's right, it's in front of the apartment.
Yeah, I sort of remember when that came before us,
Right.
before they put the
You may recall
apartments there.
that.
So this is just a continuation of separation of a piece of that property
Correct.
so that it can be used for the convenience gas station, that kind of thing, whatever.
Correct. So a part of the annexation, of course, is to rezone some portions that had the county zoning, but there's a piece that's already in the city that still need to be rezoned, so this complete development will have one zoning.
So the piece that is, they're trying to have be zoned commercial, that, it's already been taken.
Correct. It's gone through the replatting process already.
Okay. And so, and you said that's about
5 acres.
and so only that portion, if we change the zoning, would be commercial, or could it then be accounted for that? Because it looked like a bigger piece.
That bigger piece is going to remain to be, are you speaking of the piece that has the apartment on it, or are you speaking of another portion of the land?
Oh, so the piece that, I know the piece that has the apartment on it is already
It's going to remain
residential.
already with the zoning it has. Then there's a piece that's in the frontage that's still going to have a rezoning with the city's PRD. That's going to change from the apartments. The annex piece that has the general commercial from the county, that's going to be rezoned once the annexation takes place with the GC for both parcels of land,
Okay.
if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, okay.
Any other questions?
So basically, we're just shaving off a part of that giant residential area that's basically not being used, because I've drove by there many times, right? And then they just attach that to the back of the already commercial lot to give them some more room to do what they needed to do. Is that
Exactly.
basically what they did? Okay.
Yes.
I got one small question, because it kind of throwing me. So how did part of it still belong to the county?
So there's a
If it was
portion.
a separation, you know, from,
There's a portion of the land that's in the county. So there's city boundaries and there's county boundaries that's immediately adjacent. So the piece that's immediately adjacent is going to be annexed. And of course, by law, it has to be zoned because it does not have a zoning right now. And so the piece that's within where the apartment is, they've divided or sliced that small portion off. That's going to be rezoned as well. Then at some point, they'll merge that parcel together to have one zoning, one parcel. Yes.
Thank you.
Of course.
Will the applicant come forward and state their name and address for the record, tell us what they intend to do on this property?
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Bob Kaufman. I represent Arpit Kumar. Arpit, when I talked about 20 minutes ago, was in a log jam on 285, but he is on the way. He should be walking in any second. And Shayla, thank you for that clarity on how this is all working. I'll give you kind of a description of the property, and y'all already know where it is. You head down toward Atlanta on I-20, you take a right. But as you go down Lee Road, when you take that right, this is from the exit ramp down to, there's a lift station for WSA. And then on the back side of the property, there's a creek. And so basically, the apartment complex folks can't use that land that's on the Lee Road side of the creek. And that's what's being added to this other piece to make it one decent usable piece. But as was mentioned, it was originally zoned PRD and CG in the county. We're looking for CG right now for the gas, for the convenience store with gas pumps and the package store. You'll notice that there's a single entrance. It's directly across from Mon Air, and that's because the DOT calls the shots as to how you can get out to Lee Road beneath that interchange. And so for about 400 feet down from that interchange, nobody can exit onto Lee Road. So that's why and it makes sense to line it up directly across from Mon Air as well. It is a mixed-use design classification, and the request for general commercial fits within that character area. The staff report, as you've seen, concludes the request is consistent with the purpose of the Unified Development Ordinance. It is compatible with the purpose and intent of the most recent comprehensive plan. They also state there's no anticipated devaluation of existing businesses in the area. What used to be there is a gas station years ago and the Waffle House. And they were leveled years ago. In fact, the Waffle House is across the street now, as y'all may know, as I know very well. But happy to field any questions. I'm very familiar with the project, so I'm sure I can answer them on behalf of RPIT until he arrives.
Are there any questions from the board?
Just have one, on the Google map that we have, it looks like there's a cutout, but there's a house there? Is that
Down,
either south or north?
South of it. It'd be south.
that may be the WSA.
Ah, okay.
It's a pretty good-sized pump station, lift station, you know, that,
Looks like a house, but,
yeah, it is a structure, it's a brick structure,
okay.
but that's WSA.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of the project, ask questions, or make other comments? Please come forward and tell us your name and address. Is there anyone who would like to speak other than in favor of this project? Please come forward and tell us your name and address. Is there any need for further discussion? Do I have a motion regarding this application?
I'll make a motion to approve item number 24-252.
Is there a second? All right. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion passes and the application is recommended for approval and will be heard by the mayor and city council at their legislative meeting on Thursday, August 15th, and then voted upon by them at their meeting on the following Monday, August 19th. Thank you, sir. The third case is item 24-254. Hold a public hearing and consider a request for a change in zoning from PUD Plan Unit Development District to LI Light Industrial District for plus or minus 95.052 acres at Riverside Parkway and Roberts Road in Land Lot 169, District 1, Section 5, Parcel ID 016-9015-0004. Application by Tributary Land Partners, Dillard Sellers. Staff will now present the item.
Thank you. So this is another item you may have had some familiarity with about a year or so ago back. On Roberts Road, there was a request to have a data center. They're requesting to have the same use again. So this use currently has a PUD zoning with an R6 focus. R6 is our apartment style
Right.
zoning. So they have a focus to have residential with apartments there. Your future land use says it could either be mixed use or light industrial. So the applicant is requesting to have the other, which is light industrial. So your future land use does propose there to be an opportunity for light industrial here. As you may be familiar, Tributary is a very much mixed use area. It's very much different than most parts of our city, as it allows for there to be a conjunction of different uses combined together. And that's why you're seeing industrial, you're seeing residential, you're seeing office, you're seeing a lot of different uses in that particular area. So with that being said, they're requesting a data center at this location on Roberts Road. They had a DRI sometime back during last year. They did go back before the DRI process just to ensure that the state is in agreement with the past DRI. And is in fact found that they are still in fact in agreement with the past DRI and findings there. The applicant was aware of that, and the applicant can speak more on that DRI and what they're pertained to be recalled to do. I do know there's 8 conditions that the applicant would like to ensure that conditions are attached inside of that. Staff did take a look at those items and do support that. It's not before you as of now because it was provided to us just recently. However, we would like to ask if you could consider those 8 conditions. That concludes my report.
All right. Are there any questions from the board?
Wait, you went real fast. You said something about conditions?
Yes, I said that the applicant has proposed 8 conditions, and that's something that they can present to you all, but I was asking for you all to consider those 8 conditions.
Oh, so we don't have them?
No.
Okay.
So, okay, so this is for the data center before, I mean, they proposed it before, and now they're coming back with it again.
Correct, correct. It's a different user or a different applicant than it was previously. That particular location has had the same use being requested multiple times by different applicants, but they have gone through a DRI with the state. The state has identified there to be basically, and I'll let the applicant speak on what those conditions were or what those findings were with the state, but staff was aware that they're making some small revisions to that, as far as to that particular site.
All right. Are there any questions?
So it's, looking at the picture, it's not one data center, it's 3?
It's 3.
Okay.
3 structures. And if you may recall, that was the same thing that was provided in the last application. There were 3 structures then as well.
Oh, okay.
I will say it's pretty much the same application as before, but I will say that the applicant has been meeting with residents of the area. Those conditions were created in conjunction with those residents being present,
Okay,
based on what the applicant has shared with staff.
okay. Are there any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Will the applicant come forward and state their name and address for the record? Tell us what you intend to do on this property.
Good evening, Julie Sellers, 1776 Peachtree Street, here on behalf of the applicant, property owner. Joining me tonight is Adam Richards, Tyler Fan, and Alex MacArthur. As Ms. Reed said, we are here. I wanted to just, this is a property that certainly has history that we don't need to go back through, but I did want to make it clear. I believe that all of you were on the board in 2022, and that is when this property came before you for an application by Vantage Real Estate. I've got a copy of that if you'd like to just refresh to see the changes from the site plan. I don't have it in my presentation, but this was kind of that application. Happy to hand this. It was a, substation was up on Riverside. It was one very large building. It was right at the corner of Roberts Road. And so there was another application last year that went through a DRI, but that application was withdrawn prior to coming before you. So you may have seen it, but to my knowledge, I don't think it was ever formally presented to you. And so we are here after significant community engagement and some very important site plan changes. I'm going to go ahead and go through a brief presentation and then try to reserve some time for rebuttal if needed. This is the surrounding area. I know most of you are probably familiar, but the tributary area in general, we refer to it, and it's a large area. Riverside Parkway certainly has a lot of different uses on it. So just for your orientation, the property is located across from the McMaster Car and the Keehee distribution centers. And there are some new office warehouses that are right on Riverside Parkway on I'm going to call it the south side of Riverside Parkway. Just to give you the look and feel of the surrounding areas, this is the East Group property. So this is the newest building that was constructed. If you're at the Tributary Village Center, the Tributary neighborhood, driving down Riverside Parkway, Red Cross is going to be on your right-hand side. This is the new building that is on the corner of Roberts Road. And so we would be on the opposite side of Roberts Road from these buildings. This, of course, is the Red Cross building, McMaster Car, and then Keehee. So just giving you kind of a sense of our immediate surrounding area. This is some of the development. This is the site plan, and I also have a board that might be easier. in case you have questions, I can point to things. But just to kind of, walk through this site plan for you. The data center and other requested uses are going to be a good fit for this area. And as you can see on the site plan, as I mentioned, Roberts Road, which is right here, the newer buildings are located right here. So as you're traveling down Riverside, you see those buildings. What you see on this site plan is a 3-acre city park that would have that corner really grounded with that park, not with the data center building. This will allow for additional screening and buffering from, kind of that Riverside Parkway corridor. So as you are approaching, and as you see on the slide, that is circled in purple. That's the 3 acres that would be dedicated to the city for the park.
Does the city Parks and Rec know that they're getting this?
There have been conversations with the city, and I believe that, I don't know that there has been any formal planning or anything, but there have been conversations, my understanding, between Councilman Estes and the city's parks staff, as well as the city manager.
Okay.
There is not currently a park in the district, and so that is one of the drivers for this, was a desire to have a park in the district.
Were you going to say something, Ms. Jordan?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, Mr. Chris Bass is here, he's the Parks
Right.
and Recreation Director. And he's here just
Right.
mostly to observe and learn, but he can comment.
I was going to ask him, Mr. Bass, have you heard that they were going to donate 3 acres for a city park? And if that's sufficient for a city park?
So, Ms. Reed and I had a conversation today.
If you could come up, please.
But can you put a park in light industrial
Well, that's why I'm asking
where
all
children are
this.
playing?
It's a passive use.
Huh?
I'll let him speak.
Up to the podium, sir.
Good evening, Chris Bass, 8830 Gurley Road, Parks Recreation Director. Ms. Reed and I actually had a conversation earlier today about this, which is why I decided to come to the meeting to hear more in terms of the proposed plan. With respect to the city manager, we have not had a conversation about it, so I'll just share the facts in terms of what has already been presented to the city manager and council in terms of what we're trying to do in that particular ward. We have conducted a land acquisition assessment to identify potential parks in Wards 1 and Wards 5. Wards 5 is our target right now because we don't have a city park, as mentioned. However, I have not had an opportunity to really take a deep dive in terms of this particular proposal. My understanding is 3 acres, so we would have to go back. Just receiving this information earlier today, I would have to go back and really see, would this suffice based on what the residents have asked for in terms of a city park. But to the point, there are interest in acquiring land for a city park in that particular ward.
Do you have an idea, I guess, as far as how much footage most of the city parks are? Or?
Yeah, so we have some as small as .89. That's Mill Village Park. Then we have as large as Hunter Park. You have Jesse Davis Park. Those are your large footprints, so up to 40 miles. We have, of course, the golf course, which is technically considered a park, 80-plus acres. So they range from different size.
Okay.
But the area to the south of here is currently zoned public, semi-public. So is that an area that you're looking to add a park to in this ward?
I will share, and this is actually public, in our land acquisition assessment that was presented to council, this particular area did come up as an identified area where we would look to have a park. Not the 3 acres specifically, but along that Riverside corridor.
Yeah, I mean, I just asked the question because, I mean, yeah, it looks good to say, developer says, yes, we're going to donate 3 acres, but I want to make sure it's 3 acres that's sufficient for a city park to put things on it, but it's also usable. To say that you're going to donate 3 acres and then you can't use it for a city park.
Absolutely.
If I,
Thank you,
Alda,
sir.
Off of this, you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong. From what I could tell, the new amphitheater and park just down the street, I believe that's 2 acres. So to give you just, I'm not good
Right.
with, being able to visualize, so that's what I was trying to find a comparison.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be an acre larger than that, if that's helpful.
I'll need to verify that. I can look that up in a second.
Okay.
But, yeah, like I say, we've identified that is an area where we use the city park. So,
Okay.
that's the fact. Like I say, I haven't talked to the city manager yet, and we agreed that when she get back, we will have that conversation.
All right, thank you, sir.
Right, and if I can add, I apologize to Chris because he wasn't expecting to come to the podium tonight, so my
That's okay.
dear apologies.
It's very helpful.
He was just coming to observe, but I did have a call with him today to let him know that it would be best to inform the city manager of this request prior to the council meeting. So she's out today. Happy birthday, Marcia. She's out today, but once she's back, Chris and I will have a conversation with her to have that conversation prior to council's decision on this item.
But Shirley, the area that's south of here is public, semi-public. Is that gonna be, is that part of the
So not to...
consideration?
Right, so not to speak prematurely to the conversation we'll have with the city manager, but Chris and I have had a conversation as to where, if this was to be a donated portion of land to the city, what and where would be the best location for that. That conversation hasn't happened yet. We will work with Julie and her team to help determine that. So I will say that we are happy to hear of a proposed donation.
The south of this property is the Chattahoochee River.
That is correct, yes.
So, ideally,
Understood.
so.
Understood, and I think his assessment that he has on record does help with that conversation.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because I think it's neat, the 3 acres, because I know that the city is looking for a park down in that area, but, I mean, it's right off Riverside, and I do see there's foliage and stuff, and Riverside's a busy road, and put a park right there off a major busy road with kids, I didn't,
So with his assessment and his expertise, he'll determine where he thinks that would be best. And then, of course, with the city manager, if she's able to say that we are able to take the recommendation, we can communicate that over to the applicant.
okay.
And you can put a park in light industrial?
Yes, it's not restrictive.
Okay.
Well, I think, yeah, that's something that should probably be figured out before it goes before city council, is if it's a good fit. All right.
In my understanding, based on the district councilman, I do believe that he has already engaged in conversations with the city manager. So I think that this is something that has, kind of been a topic of conversation for a while. In addition to donating that 3 acres, to the city, another community request that differs from the 2022 application that was before you, you may recall, that had the substation that the data center needs located right on Riverside Parkway. And that was some information that we heard from the community saying, we don't want that right on the Riverside. Tuck it back behind the building. So that's one of the changes that you see with this request. In addition to that, especially for those of you who live or might frequent the area, cell phone coverage can be a bit spotty. And so that was another request, is if the property owners would consider allowing an area for a cell phone tower. We're not in the cell phone tower business, so we're not constructing a cell tower, but we have agreed to, if there's a tower company that's interested, we've got some land available to make that happen, to be able to have some extra connectivity for the residents and employees in that area. In addition to that, as you recognized, the Chattahoochee does run south of this property. So on the plan hatched in orange, this is the try to be my own Vanna White here. This right here. So if you all can see this line right here, this was another opportunity to really, kind of partner with the public, provide a public use easement to allow for the public to be able to have a trail that would go down to the river. There are certainly plans for, kind of more connectivity along the river. It's obviously a great amenity in the area, but right now you've got private property, so this would open that up for the public to be able to access that. So we believe that with these, fairly significant changes over the last 2 years. It really is in line. Hopefully you see that by the lack of crowd in the room here tonight, that the property owners really have, dug in and tried to really be thoughtful and be responsive in response to what they heard. Another change that did occur from when this was before you the last time, in 2023, the city adopted the comprehensive plan update, and as Ms. Reed mentioned, part of that update was designating this property for light industrial. So by approving this light industrial use, the zoning district, that is in keeping with the city's future plans for this area. Happy to answer any questions that you may have. Again, this is one of 3 applications we have before you. This is the rezoning, and then we have 2 variances that we'll talk about separately. One of the things that I did want to mention, and Ms. Reed mentioned it, that we had it in our application. We are agreeable and have offered for this rezoning to be conditioned to the data center use. So this is not a situation where you would recommend approval, the city council would approve, and it's just a blanket light industrial zoning, and they can do whatever they want. So we are fine with it being restricted to the data center. One of the benefits that I haven't really talked about much is the benefit of the lack of truck traffic and the lack of traffic for the data centers. Riverside Parkway, especially the folks that live in the tributary communities, traffic is very congested on Riverside. And so having a use of the property that does not add to that is certainly a benefit, and we are agreeable to and have offered up to restrict our property. If for some reason a data center use did not move forward and they wanted to do something else, they would start from scratch and come back through the process. So I'd like to reserve my remaining time for rebuttal if needed, but then certainly happy to answer questions that you all may have.
Yes, sir.
A couple of questions of the sellers.
Yes.
So the existing tree line that is parallel to Riverside is gonna stay because the East Group project that you said is atrocious. I mean, it is an eyesore. So I need to make sure that that tree line that's next to Riverside is gonna stay.
That will stay, and when I was out there, it's, when you're driving on Riverside, it's hard to kind of see, but when I was out there and
There's
kind
power
of,
line,
there's
there's
that.
power lines right behind.
Exactly. So everything, there's a pretty good, batch of trees before the power line. And then the other thing that I didn't really mention in this, but I think just kind of thinking about comparing and contrasting with that new, how visual you can see that new development. The other aspect is that this property, the grade is lower. So, Riverside's going to be up here, and then the buildings are set down because of that grade change. So there's a shift in elevation. So that will, not only will it be farther away, have the tree canopy screening, it'll also sit down a bit, which I think also helps from a visual screening standpoint.
All right, and then in your diagram, and also on the one that you provided, what's the plan to bridge the creek between the 2 facilities, or 3 facilities, I should say? There's a creek that runs right in between them. Is there going to be a bridge? Is there going to be, what's going to happen there? And then and then I guess the question on the other side of that is that creek that's on the other side of the other 2 buildings is not going to be touched, right?
Behind Building C in the substation?
Oh, I'm
We've
sorry.
got a few creeks. I think there
Yeah,
is.
I mean, so there's one, it looks like between A and C. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then there's one behind A and B.
Yes, hi, I'm Adam Richards with Reliant Real Estate. We're the property owner. So the crossing there between A and C would just be a culvert-type crossing, which is, typical of what you see over a stream or creek crossing. It's allowed under, I think, the Army Corps and state and local stream
So
buffers.
cars will be able to transfer between there?
Cars?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes. And then what this kind of one-dimensional plan doesn't show is a lot of the elevations and contours, so it's kind of hard. I think when you're talking about the other stream,
Yes.
which is under the substation lines,
Yep.
that's the highest point of the property.
Okay.
So you've got significant elevation, you've got rock, you've got, some site development challenges, which frankly will be great because I think they will be undisturbed. And when you're rounding that corner, it's going to really help to block out, some of the buildings and for the remainder of the site where really Building C, I think, will be the only one that's visible. We've got an extensive landscape buffer there, as well as that berm that sits behind the power lines.
Yep.
There's kind of a natural berm that sits up, and then, as Julie said, everything really starts to fall down, 80 feet of elevation change.
So the foliage and, I guess trees and such around that creek behind A and B are gonna stay?
They will, yeah,
It's not
that'll
gonna be
be,
cleared out? And
That's
then-
right.
And then do you plan, it says here for public easement for bicycle pedestrian, are you guys gonna clear that out? Or are you just gonna provide
well,
for someone else to do that?
yeah, so currently there's a road there, and there are 3 houses.
okay.
Those are all in the county, and
Off-
ironically, those 3
Off of,
parcels.
you're saying that's a road now? Not
There-
Roberts Road, but the other, the
There
easement?
is. So when you
Okay.
go down Roberts, it then,
Ah,
if you've ever driven down where the water facility
I haven't
is.
gotten that far.
Yeah, so there's a road that veers off to the left. You can kind of see it on this site plan right before the orange starts.
Yep.
So that road is a gravel
Okay.
road, and there are 3 parcels there that are actually in the county but zoned light industrial, and they're 3 rental houses. And so we haven't really coordinated. What's interesting, and just to add to what Julie said, really all of this site plan and the conditions that we've talked about have been, have had a lot of eyes on them and a lot of conversations with Councilman Estes, a lot of feedback. We met with the HOA a couple of months ago at Tributary and have had some town hall meetings. And so this has sort of evolved over a long period of time and taken, some different twists and turns. And we've really tried to accomplish as many of the requests as we can. We have an emergency-only access off of Riverside. We've got sidewalks coming down Roberts to lead to that path. But the park was really, I think that evolved out of the substation. People didn't want an eyesore on the corner, which is completely understandable. And this is the first time we've actually, as a property owner, been in to seek rezoning. It's previously been Edge Connects and Vantage, which were both users of the property. And so I think this has finally given us an opportunity to really connect more with the community and to really listen, where they've been more in a hurry and they've been trying to meet their financial obligations and get this thing built as fast as they can, zoned as fast as they can. Everybody's been competing for power. And so we just tried to take a little bit of a step back and slow this whole thing down. And the park is really the flattest spot on the property where we've sited it. And so just in looking at all the elevation, the topography, that's the reason it's placed there. I mean, we didn't want to put it up on the top of the mountain. We didn't want to put it down at the bottom, where it just runs along a creek. And I think Councilman Estes' view for that park was more of a natural park. He was concerned about having basketball courts where people show up that aren't residents or aren't, so that's something that obviously we can get more into with the Parks and Recreation Department, but I think he envisioned more of a passive park there that was less expensive to maintain and more of a woodland trail type area that was consistent with the connecting Chattahoochee trails.
Well, I appreciate you working with the community, Councilman Estes, and being receptive to the changes. I think it's a lot better proposal, honestly, than it was a couple months ago, or last year it was.
Yeah.
Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And then one last question, the easement that you're proposing, does that run all the way down to the river, or does it just meet up to the creek?
No,
The property line, okay.
So
Because the property is behind, or south of there is semi-public, which is, okay, I got you.
Yeah, it is. I think it's 400 acres or so. I'm looking up at the screen, I think you guys have it there, but
Yeah.
on my side of the screen, everything to the right is the green space area, but then it does
Yeah.
kind of wrap around the bottom portion
Yeah.
of this site.
Yeah.
And so that would connect to that strip that runs between us and the Chattahoochee River.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have questions. So are these 8 proposals, are they binding? Are they definite?
The conditions
Yeah.
that we offered, yes, those are the 8 conditions that we have said based on the conversations, most of which are already reflected on the site plan. But yes, we would be fine with those being approved as part of a zoning condition for the approval. And that would make them binding.
They have to be read into the into the,
Remember last time, it was a blanket zoning,
yeah.
and that was
So-
the issue. This is a restrictive.
So if we zoned it light industrial with only data centers, that would only be for this particular development. If the next folks came in, it could just be light industrial.
Go ahead. Yep.
So the way that works is that if this was approved as to be a data center only, they would have to go back before the new applicant or the new property owner have to go back before council to ask for a new zoning that removes that condition.
Removes that condition.
It would stick until we unstuck it.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this project, ask questions, or make other comments? Please come forward and tell us your name and address. Is there anyone who would like to speak other than in favor of this project? Please come forward and tell us your name and address. Do I have a motion regarding this application?
I just have one other question.
You got another question?
Yeah, in regards to the cell tower, it's sort of written as, in the event one of the companies want to use that property as a good place to put a cell tower, then you all would decide where on that property the cell tower would go. Is that what is this to read?
Yes, sir. So under this site plan, we've designated an area, and a lot of this, it's hard to imagine how much civil work and site planning work has gone into this, but a lot of this placement is based on the topography of the site. And, you know, thinking through that a cell tower needs a good elevation, so it's not down in a hole. But we've identified an area that would, it's a little circle below the purple circle.
Yeah, it's on our map. It's right below the city park. You could walk up and show him, ma'am.
And about how big is that?
Yeah, no, some of that text is hard to read. But we've tried to put all the conditions, I think all of them, on the site plan for you guys. But our thought there, and just conversations we've had with the neighborhood and others, and we've called every cell tower company we can think of to call, to see if we could get them in here. We've called lobbyists, you know, state government affairs people for AT&T, and they're interested in the area. It's just not in their pipeline yet. And so that's kind of the answer we keep getting. But what we would do is likely have an easement for the cell tower with that cell tower, you know, builder or owner. And so it would be, they're usually about an acre or half an acre, and so they would have access, and that's another reason we put it there, is just because they need to be able to get to the cell tower to maintain it and to service it. So it would likely, I think, long answer to your question is, it would be an easement with a cell tower developer.
I was just curious about the verbiage, but I see it on your plan already, like,
Yeah,
if we
that's
do
why
it, this
we
is the
worded it
spot.
that way, is just because we can't promise a cell tower, but
Right, right.
we would love to have one if somebody will come, say they would, you know, like to put one there.
Crown or somebody.
Exactly, Crown Castle,
Yeah.
AT&T, Verizon, we've reached out to those groups.
And the same for the bridge, that's also potentially, it's not, just like it's not, because I think you asked about this, like, if we put the bridge there, it would be something that you all potentially would build.
You mean crossing the creek?
Yeah.
No, the
It
creek
says
has-
public use, the bicycle,
Oh.
yeah,
Oh, the pedestrian path.
yeah.
So I think that's still a blank canvas as far as what that becomes. You know, it could be something like the Beltline where it's a paved path down there. Or it could just be a more of a natural trail. And I don't think that's really going to come into fruition until you get the Chattahoochee Trail and path system all figured out. Not you guys, but as to what that really looks like. What we're offering is the easement and the access to be guaranteed to the public.
Which is cool.
So the connectivity is something that we want, we want to be able to provide.
Are there any other questions?
Just
Okay.
one more, I'm sorry. Your transmission feed for the data centers,
Yes.
is this going to be fiber, is microwave, or a combination, or?
Ooh, that's above my pay grade. But
That's
no,
above your pay
So that's all designed by Georgia Power and, Greystone, however that
I mean, the
power.
data center itself, though, has to have a traffic
Yes.
feed.
They
And
have
that
to have-
traffic is either going to be via glass, copper, RF, so we're just trying to get an idea of that, if you're going to have microwave signals down there, or you're just going to be strictly, fiber cable.
I don't know the exact answer to that. I can
Okay.
do some more investigating and find that out. My understanding, though, and maybe this will answer your question, is it's going to be more of your traditional overhead transmission lines that run off of the main lines into the substation. And so those will be, where you see those two dashed lines, those would be the overhead transmission lines.
Got it. I got that for the power.
Oh, okay.
But I was just speaking about the data itself.
The data
It's
itself.
got to get in those buildings,
That would
or it's
be-
either
that-
going to be fiber.
That would be fiber.
Okay.
Yes,
that's what
sorry.
trying to
I was thinking you were talking about power.
No, no.
That I didn't know as much about. But yes, that would be fiber.
Okay, all right, good.
One reason data centers love this part of Atlanta is because the fiber is so good. Yep.
All right. If there is no further discussion, do I have a motion regarding this application?
I'll make a motion to approve item 24-254 with the 8 conditions proposed by the property owner.
All right. Is there a second?
A second.
All right. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
All right. The motion passes, and the application is recommended for approval and will be heard by the city's legislative meeting on Thursday, August 15th, and then voted upon by them at their meeting on the following Monday, August 19th. Thank you. The fourth case is item 24-255. Hold a public hearing and consider a request for a variance from section 8.01 Echo of the Unified Development Ordinance to reduce the required parking spaces from 1,657 to 262 parking spaces on lot of plus or minus 95.052 acres located on Riverside Parkway and Roberts Road in land lot 169, District 1, Section 5, parcel ID 016-901-50004, application by Tributary Land Partners, Dillard Sellers. Staff will now present the item.
Yes, sir. This is the same particular piece of land that you have just recently heard. The applicant is asking to reduce their parking. The current code has changed, but during the time of their application, their square footage was based, well, their number of parking was based on their square footage. That was during the time of their initial application. Since then, as recent as last night, I've presented a text amendment to council that first came before you all as a recommendation, and staff has presented it to council last night to change that particular requirement. Now it's 1 parking space per employee of the largest shift. So with that being said, the applicant is not certain as to whether they would need more or less, but they're going to continue to move forward to at least ask for the opportunity to have that number as a certain versus withdraw, later here they do need the requirement to come back before you. So they rather be safe and keep it on their agenda for the amount of parking spaces that they're asking for with the 262. And with that, that concludes my report.
Are there any questions from the board?
No questions. I was wondering about that because I know we voted on some changes pertaining to data centers and parking, that concrete area. So their application was in prior
It was
to
in
that
motion.
change, so now they have to come in and ask for it. Okay.
That's correct. And they would have been able to have asked this months ago, but they had to go back through the DRI process to ensure that they were in fact meeting those requirements as a past DRI. As you may know, the state requires that when a DRI is required for a site, staff or the city must pause on that application until the DRI is finalized. And we received that finalization or confirmation a few weeks ago. So that's kind of how this particular request kind of got pushed around until tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will the applicant come forward and state their name and address for the record? Tell us what you intend to do on this property.
Good evening, Julie Sellers with Dillard Sellers, 1776 Peachtree Street, Atlanta, Georgia, here on behalf of the applicant. As Director Reed indicated, when we submitted the application, the parking calculations were based on the building size. We would have been excessively overparked. Given the fact that the City Council approved the text amendment last night, our request is for you all to make a recommendation of approval for a parking at 262. We will certainly be taking some time between now and the City Council meeting. It may be that we get comfortable and we withdraw the application, but it feels a bit premature tonight, and so happy to answer any questions. But again, I think this is in line with what the city has recognized, that for this type of use, basing the parking on the building size just really results in far too much parking, and we'd rather save that green space and not have excessive parking. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the board?
Yeah, I have a question. How many parking spaces do you think you actually need? Like
So,
10?
I think it'll depend on the number of employees, but I think maybe like 150 would.
I think we're trying to be cognizant of, not just the day-to-day employees, but if, say, there was a function or an event, or you had visitors in town that don't work there every day, I think there's probably going to be between 50 and 100 employees at this facility.
Oh, okay.
But I would just, so I think we'll be, we would be fine with the 262, but we wouldn't want to only put 50 to 100, right? So I think we're trying to kind of, that 262 is based on what is on our site plan.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
that's where
just-
we came up with that
Yeah,
random
most
number.
times you don't have that many people working in a data center
Yeah, that's
relative
right.
to a
So
building
I
that
think it's
size
probably
normally.
30 per building
Oh,
is
okay.
what I would guess.
3 buildings.
And again, with this site and the topography, we've really gone vertical to kind of save the green space, and data centers are just, with the modernization, are, now going 2 and 3 stories. And so that's really, I think, reduces that footprint, furthering the green space.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board? Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of the project, ask questions, or make other comments? Please come forward and tell us your name and address. Is there anyone who would like to speak other than in favor of this project? Please come forward and tell us your name and address. Is there any need for further discussion? Do I have a motion regarding this application?
I'll make a motion that we approve application number 24-255.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion passes and the application is recommended for approval and will be heard by the city's mayor and council at their legislative meeting on Thursday, August 15th, and then voted upon by them at their meeting on the following Monday, August 19th. The fifth case is item 24-256. Hold a public hearing and consider a request for a variance from section 5.04 Bravo of the Unified Development Ordinance to increase the maximum principal building height from 50 feet to 75 feet on a lot of plus or minus 95.052 acres located on Riverside Parkway and Roberts Road in Land Lot 169, District 1, Section 5, Parcel ID 0169015004. Application by Tributary Land Partners, Dillard Sellers. Staff will now present the item.
Yes, sir. This is the same property as well. The property is a bit sloped in regards to topography. There is a creek that we've discussed throughout the property as well. Because of that, that's being missed for the construction, they're asking instead of to basically stack and build higher, basically. So they're asking to increase the minimum from 50 feet to 75 feet. I can say that we've had that request before. It's not an extreme request. With that, staff did not find that to be anything that was too much to ask. So with that, I believe there's a presentation associated with this, so we'll ask to see if we can have that loaded. All righty, perfect. Is that the same one? Oh, you got to turn it. Got it. All right, thank you, Julie.
All right, okay, yes. Will the applicant come forward and state their name and address for the record? Tell us what you intend to do on the property.
Good evening. Julie Sellers, Dillard Sellers, 1776 Peachtree Street in Atlanta, Georgia, here on behalf of the applicant. And just briefly to touch on the height variance, as Director Reed indicated, and as we've talked about before, there is extreme topography on this site. We've got multiple stream buffers, so it really is a very constrained site. With the site plan, we've got about 13% of the site is all that we're using for the buildings. The data centers do need that extra height given the more modernization, and so we are asking for an increase from the light industrial height maximum is 50. We're asking to increase that to 75. That would allow for the 3-story building. Again, the grade is certainly lower than Riverside. I did think that it was interesting, just for a comparison, under our current zoning, which we could have an office building that could be 12 stories tall or 180 feet, whichever is greater. So depending on how you're looking at it, we're asking for 25 more than what light industrial, but we are actually significantly less than what could be allowed. So happy to answer any questions that you may have.
How will that, look from the road? If you just build up versus, like you said, digging and doing this,
Yeah, this slide shows sort of the change. We've got about make sure I'm doing my math properly, I think about a 15 feet difference between Riverside and where that building footprint would be. Again, it's set back farther from the road, and it would be a 3-story building. So pretty similar in nature to some of the surrounding more industrial uses. I think the Red Cross building is even 4 stories in part.
Okay. Did you have one of our building renderings in this slide by chance? Okay, that's fine. I was just going to add that a lot of these data centers now, because they are going multi-story, especially the visible street front sections of the building will have, architectural glass and other features that do give it that office building look. And that would be our desire. We've talked a lot with Councilman Estes and the neighborhood about following, the tributary design guidelines, especially the more commercial. There's a lot of residential guidelines in that. I don't know if you've ever seen that guidebook. It has a lot of finishes and different materials that they would like to see incorporated. So our goal is to really work closely with those, but also incorporate some, design guidelines that make this look like an office building from the street, from Riverside.
It just won't be a 12-story office building.
Okay. Are there any questions from the board?
Yeah, I was just concerned about that too, that with a data center, I mean, you can really do anything with the outside. Going up another story has improved greatly, so you really can have space than back in the days when we were using the big switches and you needed, 10 stories downtown, that kind of thing, so.
The 2 stories with the 50 feet, because it's not traditional stories, would end up making it too small. So we do need that 75 to be able to get kind of the equivalent of a 3-story.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the board? Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of the project, ask questions, or make other comments? Please come forward and tell us your name and address. Is there anyone who would like to speak other than in favor of this project? Please come forward and tell us your name and address. Is there any further need for discussion? Do I have a motion regarding this application?
I'll make a motion to approve with a condition of having a comparable or cosmetic, or the right term, facade, so that it gives it appearance, of office space or something like that, that would fit that area. And this is for item number 24-256.
Do we need to discuss that?
Yes. I would say for staff, that would be a bit challenging. Conditions are based on measurable items. For example, if you're looking to have a certain style development, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, your code already identifies what the development has restrictions, materials, design, but it would not be something I could just say comfortable. It has to be something that gives more of a detail. But I would say that would be a challenge to put in play. It's very general of a statement.
I got you.
Okay. So then, what is your motion for this application then? Ralph?
Better than Red Cross.
So then you're taking,
Can we measure
I
that?
understand.
so then you're taking that motion, your condition out of your motion?
Mr. Ben, I may be able to add something that would help you, your comfort level. This project will still come before you guys again. There will still be extensive design work that has to go in. There has, permitting, land disturbance permits, and, final site plan approvals. So I think there's going to be a lot of interaction with the city over what this project looks like. This is, yep. But I just wanted to add that we're not going to go start construction tomorrow or anytime soon without anybody knowing what the project looks like. And our goal is for this to be an attractive project, especially the building that fronts Riverside, first and foremost, to have those features. So I just wanted to make sure that we all knew that this wasn't the last
Right.
time we're
Well,
going
I
to have a
think
chance
if
to.
you could put a city park there, it would be nice if the buildings look attractive and it looked like a nice area, just a bunch of typical warehouse buildings, and it looks ugly. And so I think it'd be a very nice place to go to, and if they put the trail and the bicycle and walk path, it could actually be an asset to the area. So, all right, do I have a motion regarding this application?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve item 24-256.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion passes, and the application is recommended for approval and will be heard by the city's mayor and council at their legislative meeting on Thursday, August 15th, and then voted upon by them at their meeting on the following Monday, August 19th. Thank you. The sixth case is item 24-266, hold a public hearing and consider a proposed ordinance to amend Articles 10, 11, and 12 of the Unified Development Ordinance regarding Georgia's zoning procedures law. Staff will now present the item.
Okay, now the fun item. So, yes, Miranda and I have spent almost a whole year on this document. I'm just kind of working on reviews and comments and meetings. And this particular item is a state law, which means that, well, it's two-part. Let me start by saying this. There's a state law piece, and then our great staff attorney said, well, while we're doing our state requirement, let's also make amendments where we found that staff is having challenges. So we combined, and that's what kind of took longer, was because we had to work through some things and kind of meet to see where the challenges were on the additional items. So we'll split this presentation up really briefly and quickly. The first one, of course, the state requires there to be a law for, as you know, we are a home rule state, which means that the state of Georgia gives us permission to zone as we please, but they have certain provisions where they're going to say, even though you are allowed to zone as you please, there are things that we're going to monitor you on and ensure that you're doing properly. So with that, the state has said when it comes to variances, variances should be heard concurrent. Ironically, you just heard a concurrent variance. So what that means is where there's a rezoning and there's a variance need at the same time, we should have that application heard together concurrently. That keeps it from where the applicant's having to wait weeks to a month to be heard again for the same exact property. It allows development to happen a lot sooner. It gives a definition as to what is a zoning decision. It spells that out. Again, these are items or languages that's coming directly from the state. Administrative variance, which is almost, it's interesting because I have the authority to give a very large variance myself without it going before council, without it going before you all as a body. I have a certain percentage that I can give a variance to. The state now says that that must be done as a public hearing, which now means I would have to present it just as a public hearing for the applicant to have their presentation to the public to hear. Well, staff believes if that's the same requirement that council has, then we should only have a variance option to council. It takes away from the admin option for staff. It allows for that responsibility solely be with our council, which we believe will do an excellent job. Okay? And then here's a more detailed piece of that. So if the city initiates a piece of land that is zoned single-family detached, that's your R2 to R4s, or R5s, yeah, R2 to R5s, what happens with that is that there's a different parameter, a list of rules that the city must have to be more open to the public. Additional public hearings, different sign requirements, posting requirements, notifications, et cetera. And what it does is it ensures there's nothing being done where the public isn't aware. A lot of these changes have come because the state is aware of some changes and decisions that cities collectively have made, so they make provisions and changes where all of their cities are now having to make the changes and be under one rule. And then lastly, annexations. This isn't a state law, but there's a lot of things, well, annexation is a state law, but the changes that we're doing aren't necessarily coming from that particular law that I'm mentioning. What it is coming from is that there's a lot of things in our actions as staff that we aren't necessarily noting as a process inside of the UDO. So we wanted to make it a legislative action versus a staffing action. For example, you all may not be aware that when an application comes to staff, we must, in fact, present it to council and ask their permission to receive the application before we even have the application. That is something that we're doing, but it has not been written down as a process. So that's the first part, which is the House bill. Again, that is something that the state is requiring us to adopt. What that means is that if we don't act in that way, we don't have their support in any type of, I guess, responses that applicants could have against us. So we have to adopt to be on the same page with the state. And then Miranda, if you want to speak on yours, or I can run straight through it. Okay, so Miranda is looking at chapters 10, 11, and 12 as well, to where there may be some things that the engineer who was once under community development, who is now a separate department or function, is still saying it as if that function rolls under community development, and it doesn't. So there's a lot of things that we went through to ensure that when it comes to staffing, that it was actual. We adopted our code in 2019, but we've had some changes with how we function as a staffing department with engineering and community development back in 2021, I believe. So a lot of these changes weren't reflective in your UDO, but they are now. So Miranda has spent a lot of time on that particular portion of the code, ensuring that there's no conflicts, ensuring that the right processes are being noted. And so we're just asking for your recommendation to send this over to council so that we can move it forward and have a very clean, precise document that the state also, I guess, agrees to.
All right. Are there any questions from the board?
Oh my God, you said so much.
Yeah.
So the second thing you said, I think you said that there's a process now that when an application comes before you, that to receive the application, you currently have to get permission or ask mayor and council?
For annexations.
Okay, for annexation.
And that's only for annexations.
Okay, only for annexation, before you even receive it. And
Right.
then the application process begins.
Correct.
So, what did you say that you're trying to change in that process?
We're just trying to put that in the code itself.
Trying to add that.
So there's administrative things that we do, and then there is legislative things that we do. So the legislative, of course, is going to be found in your UDO. Then there's admin items that we're doing that may not be reflective, but we're finding for it to be something that's sound and stands, it should be placed in the legislative act. But what that does is it allows for us to ensure that we're following it by law. We're not doing it off of preference. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Miranda.
I think you gave a pretty good, thorough explanation. I did just want to add, so you can kind of thumb through here and see the tracked changes. Sometimes it's literally just the change of a word, or the word was spelled wrong, or there's maybe a section that you see a whole chunk removed. It's because it repeats itself. So we use this as an opportunity not only to become compliant with state law requirements, but really to just clean this document up. As we were seeing things that contradict themselves, as Ms. Reed said, or just typographical errors, or we needed to reference where, for example, the building official makes a decision, or their designee. Maybe the assistant building official gets to do that under these circumstances, so that it's not just one person and we have a vacant position for a year. Who actually does that? Designee, the assigned person to that job duty, not just the building official, but their inspector, or not just the community development director, but her designee,
Right.
which could be the planning and zoning administrator, for example. So all just clean up, and I know it's a very, very long document, and it's super boring, I know, because I've read it a few times and gone through and made those changes, but calling things what we actually call them. Calling something a development plan versus calling it
A site
a
plan.
project approval. The official names and those definitions that are in Article 13, which we're not changing at this time, but that are in those things, we want to make sure we're calling those things the correct things. This is not only for operational benefit, but this is for the benefit of the public as well, when we have developers coming in, so that they don't have to come back 12 times with different revisions.
Right.
You know,
Right.
that's what we're looking at, is making this a little bit more user-friendly.
And one thing, if I can add to what Miranda's touching, the city's going paperless very soon. So this code speaks as if there's only a paper need. Well, Miranda's changes will reflect digital requirements as well. So there's a number of different things that you'll see throughout this document that we made changes to show where we're putting in writing what we're actually doing. What we did in 2019 is not what we're doing in 2023, 2024, moving forward.
Okay.
Aren't we responsible for variances as well at the very bottom?
You said 50, page 58,
58 and 59.
I think he's looking at the page on the number on the page,
and you're looking at the review
Yeah,
table?
Yes.
and that's going to be page 61, 62.
Okay. So
Section 12.03 review summary.
So the planning commission, you'll see like numbers 1, 2, or 3 under these various items. So for,
The last one on that table says variances. Aren't we responsible for?
you know what, you may have just caught a typo.
Deny.
Yes, you may have just caught that. So I'm glad, yes, it's supposed to be,
1, 2,
instead
3.
of under the community development director, on that last line where it just says variance, right? Because we changed, like Ms. Reed said, from having any administrative variances to it all going before planning commission and council. Yes and no. So if it's a variance that does not involve a concurrent zoning action, then it does not come before planning commission. It goes straight to council. But I will need to delineate that on this chart. So that's a good point. If it's a concurrent variance with the zoning action, just like you saw tonight with the Riverside Parkway project, then yes, it is coming to you. So thank you for pointing that out. I will make that adjustment. It's because we had the two different lines.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But that, no, thank you. Yes, you're correct. Are there any other questions about that?
And I will say, just before I forget, if there is a motion, make sure that motion includes with the recommended edits in that motion.
So would that be in reference to the section or the page? Probably the section.
Section.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can reference for that one, 12.03
Review summary.
table, or table 12-1. You can reference table 12-1.
Mr. Benton, did you have a question?
I did, but it got, I'm good, I'm clear. This was a lot, it was a lot to go through. I was trying to, cover as much of it, as I could. Once this is completed, as we vote tonight to move it forward, I guess for council review, then they do their approval, whatever. Once that's completed, then the completed documents would be posted, and then we'd be able to
That's correct.
refresh ourselves, on those understandings, or will it have to come back again and say,
So, once council gives that approval, the document will be finalized and updated inside of the system, being MuniCode. What staff will do, being that this is your planning Bible, we'll send you that link so that you can have that file, so that you're acting under the most current document. There is one edit, Miranda, if it's okay for me to mention that she and I had a conversation today about an edit that's needed. Is it okay if we kind of talk about that here, because it'll have to be amended for the 15th, 19th? So Miranda and I have been in conversations about the chairperson's position and how the votes work. No? Wait.
That will be an amendment to the Code of Ordinances instead of
Not
the-
this one. Got it.
Yes, ma'am.
Got it. We'll update you all on that later. Thank you for that. But it won't be the UDO is what she's saying, but it will be an update just to make sure that we're reflecting that the chair has the authority to do as he's needing to do.
All right.
More authority,
Give us a
that's
raise.
all. But that's all that we have on a staff report.
All right. Are there any other questions?
any update on the cities for Joy,
Oh, I'm sorry, we haven't voted on this item though yet. You
Yeah,
haven't
we have to
voted.
vote on this one first.
Oh, we haven't, oh.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance, ask questions, or make other comments? Please come forward and tell us your name and address. Is there anyone who would like to speak other than in favor of the proposed ordinance? Please come forward and tell us your name and address. Do I have a motion regarding this application?
I'll make a motion to approve item 24-266. Section 12. Thank you. Box is covering. Section 12.03 review summary in reference to table 12-1, correcting the planning commission column for variance.
Did the board get that? Is there a second?
And based on that, I'll second.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes, and the application is recommended for approval and will be heard by the city's mayor and council at their legislative meeting on Thursday, August 15, and then voted upon by them at their meeting on the following Monday, August 19th. Thank you. So now, do we have staff reports?
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Benton. That was my report. So in regards to the late great Joy Bates, the city will be having a proclamation for her on September 16th. As mentioned in my email to you, I would like to see if we as a body could be present to support her family in receiving that proclamation. So with that being said, if you could try to put time on your calendar for September 16th, but I will give you a definite email as a reminder and details, and I will let the council know that you all are present as well to show the support to her and her family.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That is all that I have.
All right, if there's no further business, I make a motion that we adjourn.
But did I say the wrong date? September 16th? Oh, the meeting? Oh, I'm sorry. Before you adjourn, sir. Thank you for that so much, Chelsea. So council has decided to move their date because of the holiday. That was originally your date. So we're going to look to see if we can push that date down a week. Chelsea, what are those dates? It's September 10th? So it would have been September what? 3rd? Okay, so with that, I guess I should have just added 7 or subtracted 7, huh? But that's going to be, instead of the 3rd, it's going to now be the 10th. So we'll send you all a reminder for that, because we will have items on that agenda.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
We were going to get pushed. And a phone call. Is there anything else? If not, we are adjourned.